Today I bring you a paradigmatic case of the ethical and moral collapse of our civilization. A civilization that is falling apart, as most people can see directly in the news. I bring up the case, I suppose you are familiar with this matter, the case of Grian A, an American woman who was brutally murdered by ICE officers, that pseudo-immigration police force created by Donald Trump in the States. This woman was killed on the 7th January. And that, in addition, well, there are a lot of circumstances in this case, including the fact that a doctor was present when she was murdered. The doctor asked to be allowed to approach her to try to save her life, if she was still alive, since she had been shot 3 times in the head. But they refused him entry. They did not allow the doctor to approach the woman. It is truly a paradigmatic, astonishing case of the moral and ethical depravity into which we are sinking, especially with these clearly fascist, far-right political leaders who are currently ruling the world. The video, I assume you have seen it, but anyway, here it is again. As you can see, one of the ICE officers, the one standing right in front of the car, shot her 3 times in the head. And then, well, they said it had been in self-defense. But please, watch this other video. Watch this video in which you can see the shooter, the police officer or pseudo-police officer who killed this woman. She was a 37-year-old woman with 3 children, a woman who had just dropped her son off at the school. Furthermore, she was a white American woman. In other words, immigration was not even an issue in her case. But look at this image of the gunman, the man who killed her. Take a good look. It was taken moments after he killed her. And as you can see, he doesn't seem to have much empathy. He doesn't seem particularly affected by the fact that he murdered a woman just minutes earlier. Clearly, we are talking about a man without mirror neurons, that is, without any kind of empathy. We would be talking about another psychopath. And watch this other video. These are the shooter's mates, who seem to be celebrating the murder of the woman more than anything else. They did not seem to be too concerned. How did President Trump and his government clique react? Well, they said, and continue to say, that it was an act of self-defense, when the images clearly show that this is not the case, that Grian had turned the steering wheel. She was not going to run over the ICE officer, and you can see in the images that the wheels were already turned in another direction. But well, Trump and his clique are saying that Grian was a professional agitator and a terrorist. That is what they are saying about her, when, I insist, she had just dropped her son off at school, and she was not carrying a gun in the glove compartment of her car. She was carrying stuffed animals. She was not carrying a gun. But the most unpleasant and repugnant aspect of all this are the words of J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, in which he says that ICE officers enjoy absolute immunity. Verbatim, ICE officers, these pseudo-police, have impunity. They can kill anyone they want and nothing will happen. This is what the Vice President of the United States has come to say. The ICE is a kind of a mixture between the Gestapo and Hitler's Nazi SA. a kind of militia or paramilitary group that Donald Trump has set up to control the streets in some way. And I fear that it will not only be about migrants. I fear that they will be used for other things. And we must bear in mind they are hiring the Proud Boys for ICE, Proud Boys being a paramilitary organization that was involved in the storm on the Capitol on 2021. The worst thing is not that these leaders have gone mad. The worst thing is that they have transmitted their madness to the population, to a large part of the population. And we now find ourselves in this situation. And I say this as a clinical psychologist, as I worked as a clinical psychologist for more than 12 years. The problem is that these leaders have transmitted their psychopathy to a large part of the population that voted for them. A large part of the population in the USA is experiencing collective psychopathy. And here we have an example. In this video you can see how a young man confronts protesters demonstrating against the killing of Grian A, and he even tells them, "We executed one of you yesterday." It is not just the hatred you see in this individual. It is not just that he is a complete and utter brainless idiot, just another psychopath, but also look at what he says.
One of you yesterday. We executed one of you yesterday.
In this situation, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has decided to deploy the Minnesota National Guard to protect the people. But consider what this means. It means that the Minnesota National Guard may engage in gunfire with ICE. We would be on the brink of a possible civil war. The situation is very serious. This is what fascist parties bring. Do not forget it. I would say to right-wing people, I would ask them, are you really going to continue supporting people like Trump, individuals like all those who praise Trump and follow Trump's policies in one way or another? Are you really going to continue doing this? Are you really going to immerse yourselves in this collective psychopathy? Because what is happening is very serious. We are gambling with the future of humanity. Because ultimately, we are facing an ethical and moral collapse of this civilization. We need to reconstruct our civilization on other ethical and moral foundations, ethics and morals that don't exist under fascism. As I say, fascism is collective psychopathy, and psychopaths have no ethics, psychopaths have no empathy, no morals. We need ethics and morals to reconstruct our civilization, and in this regard, I recommend that you read the Earth Charter. I will leave the link in the credits. And since in these videos I address the pressing problems of our world from a spiritual perspective, I would like to conclude with an exhortation, a kind of advice. An advice arising from my knowledge of the divine after more than 45 years of experience on the mystical path. I would say, if you are a supporter of Trump or any other political leader who follows these rationales, any other far-right, ultra-liberal, fascist political leader, call them what you will. If you are a follower of these currents, and if you consider yourself a believer, and you were not horrified by the murder of Grian A, I would say one thing to you. If you consider yourself a believer, do not call yourself a Christian, do not call yourself a Muslim, do not call yourself a Buddhist, because you are none of those things. Ask yourself, rather, what you are, whether you are a sheep or a goat. You know what I mean. Midnight Sun, el sol de medianoche.